Here's my opinion on the best way to make money as a photographer in 2024. There are a lot of YouTube videos on this topic, a lot of people sharing advice, and honestly, I think a lot of it just isn't that great because there's a lot of bad advice in the photography community. I've made, since I started making money as a photographer 12 years ago, millions of dollars since then, built a great business. More importantly, I've helped a bunch of other people do that. So I put together a list of my thoughts on, in 2024, some things to keep in mind if your goal is to make money as a photographer or with photography. I like to use the word with photography instead of as a photographer because it doesn't take being a great photographer to make money. Actually, the photographers that I've seen that are really, really good often make less money than those that focus on the business side. And so I'm gonna break down the things I've learned, starting with what you don't need. You don't need years of experience. You don't need a bunch of expensive gear. You don't need to have the best art of all time. You don't need to have a ton of practicing and portfolio building. You don't need any of that. And the reason I bring that up first is because that is what a lot of photographers do. They spend a lot of time on those things, right? Watching YouTube videos on how to, what the newest gear is and what's better and how to use it and all that stuff. They spend a lot of time like building a portfolio and kind of waiting to go get clients and waiting to go make money. And then they never end up making money. And there's just a reason in our industry the phrase the starving artist exists, because it's very easy if you focus on the art, the photography side of it and not the business side, it's very easy to end up a starving artist. And so my goal is to teach you what I put down here about what it takes to actually build a business and make money, which is focusing on the business side of it. So I've owned a real estate photography business for 12 years. And I think there are plenty of other ways to make money besides real estate photography. I'm not saying that's the only option, but what I am gonna do is break down why I think real estate photography and like picking real estate photography has helped me make a lot of money in photography. And you can kind of reverse engineer these same principles to your niche. So the first thing is picking a niche is the most important thing that you could possibly do. Most of the broke photographers out there are generalists, and maybe they're even really good photographers, but they'll shoot anything that comes their way. Weddings, portraits, events, real estate products, like they're just trying to get jobs. And I understand that when you're trying to make money, you're like, well, I don't want to limit myself. The problem is if you don't pick a certain niche, you never, number one, figure out how to shoot that type of photos really well. Number two, you gotta buy a ton of different gear for a ton of different niches and figure out how to use that gear. And number three, and honestly, most importantly, if you do everything, you never specialize in figuring out how to get clients in one of those different niches, right? And that's where the money is made. It's once you figure out what the clients in that niche care about, how you can serve them best, how they like to pay, and how to just make the experience good so they keep using you. That's what you gotta figure out. And you can't do that if you're gonna try like 10 niches at a time and if you're shooting a little bit of everything. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but the biggest first step you can take, going back to the title of this video, if you wanna make money as a photographer in 2024, is pick a specific type of photography and just become an expert at that type of photography. It's kind of easier, right? If you don't have 10 things to become an expert in, you just have to do one, it makes it easier. And so here's, once you pick the niche, here's some things to keep in mind, because in my opinion, not all niches are created equal, right? There's benefits of some niches over the other. And so the framework that I like to think about it in is what I call the 3 R's. You want a niche that has repeat business, meaning if you shoot for that client, they have a chance of working with you again, right? So I'll compare it to my niche, real estate photography. When we shoot for a real estate agent, there's a really, really high chance that if they like us, they're gonna use us again because they use my business every time they get a listing. And that's how they make their money, right? So they get a listing in January, they hire us. They get a listing a little bit later in January, or February, or March, or whenever it is, they hire us again, right? So repeat business is number one. The second thing, very, very important as well, especially if you like fast growth, is referral business. So in the case of real estate, right? That same agent is gonna use us over and over again. But something else that they're doing is they're working with tons of other agents on both sides of the deal, right? So, they're the seller, they're listing the property, but there's gonna be an agent representing the buyer. And so they're networking with other agents a lot. They're in the same offices together, they're physically together a lot. And that creates a lot of opportunity for Sarah, agent A, to be like, Jake, who do you use for your photography? I love those photos. And then you get that referral, right? So one of the things that people really like about real estate photography is once you get those initial clients, it's kind of like a snowball rolling down the hill collecting momentum. You have to do some work at the start to get those first few clients. It's kind of like you making that snowball. But then you start to push it, and after enough time, it gains momentum and it just goes on its own. It picks up more and more. And so that to me is what those referrals are. And those two things are very important. The third one, which is also very important, is repeat or required business rather. So it's like they have an incentive to hire you. Now, nowhere is it required to hire a real estate photographer, but it kind of is because hiring you helps them get something they want, helps the agent sell the listing. So those are the 3 R's that I think you should keep in mind when you're picking a niche, and make sure it has those. If it has all 3, it's way better than if it just has 2. If it just has 1, don't even bother. So let's look at other niches. We talked about real estate, right? So weddings, well, it has referrals, definitely, because if you do a good job with one couple, another couple is going to be interested in working with you, and they're probably going to refer you. It's required for certain, right? No one really today doesn't have a professional photographer at their wedding. So it gets those 2, but the third one, repeat business, is a 0. You're never going to shoot for the same couple again. I mean, maybe you do engagement photos a couple years in the future, but that's a really big drawback, right? Is only having 2 out of the 3 in that case. And the drawback is this: well, if you don't have repeat customers, you literally are rebuilding your business every single month from 0. Like, you have to go find a whole new group of clients. So if you set a record, it's like you have to be even better the next month, right? But with real estate, it's not the case. You got 10 clients last month. Those 10 clients are going to use you again. So when you add another one, a 12th, a 13th, it's like going up a set of stairs, right? Like, literally, right? You get 1 client, you're on stair 1. You get 2 clients, you're on stair 2. And it's not like with weddings, like, oh, I got a client. You step up, and then you literally step right back down, and the whole process resets. And that's a hard business to build, because it's not a business where if you wait, you win, right? Because waiting in weddings is not going to do you any good. Yeah, maybe some more referrals will happen and stuff like that, but you have to literally start at 0 every month. So let's look at product photography. Product photography, I think, is another pretty good option, but it doesn't have the referrals as much. So repeat business for sure. Every time they launch a new product or they have another product in their store they want you to shoot, you can get a lot of repeat business. It's required. You know, it's an online world. People are selling the products online. They're going to hire a photographer most of the time, but the referrals are just pretty low. Yeah, you might like have one product business owner network with another product business owner, but it's not the same as real estate when they're literally seeing like dozens of real estate agents every week, every day in some cases for agents going in the office. So it doesn't have all of those. So what I'm not saying here is that the only way to make money in photography is real estate photography. I just think there are genuinely, in any business, there are easier and harder ways. And for me, I stumbled into real estate photography, right? I didn't go through these 3 R's because I didn't know about them, because that's something I've thought about since then, about like what makes it so awesome, right? So like, I didn't know these 3 R's. I stumbled upon it. I got lucky. Most photographers don't do that. There's a saying that I really like. It's like there's 2 skills to building a business. Number 1 is actually building the business. And then number 2 is picking which business to go into in the first place. And so I got lucky. This was not skill for me. I just happened to pick a really great niche. But if you're watching this video, you're probably interested in making money in photography in 2024 and like what works today and what's the best today. So you have to use both of those skills. Number 1 is picking the right niche. So whether you pick real estate or something else, maybe there's a niche I've never heard of that's awesome, that just like crushes all 3 of these boxes. I just really encourage you to think about that. You know, there's a lot of people who have this idea that it's not, you know, that photography and making a photo business or just being a photographer and getting paid to do it is not a great way to make money. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I think in today's world, it's become even more, I mean, you're seeing me, this is photography, right? It's video, but it's, someone could get paid to film this. Products online are listed with that, real estate online, everything's online. So there's so much more demand for images and videos and just stuff in our creative industry today. Creative is a strong word, right? Because I'm not a really creative guy. Real estate's like the least creative, but you get the idea, right? This media has become really important. So there's this idea that like being a photographer has become less and less good. And I think that's just because so many photographers do it wrong that they think that's the case. Meanwhile, there's people like me, and it's not just me, right? I've helped tons of people build their businesses. In real estate photography specifically. I don't know a dang thing about weddings or portraits or anything like that. I just know real estate, and I know that the opportunity is alive and well. I mean, literally, if I go on my computer, I mean, you've probably seen this if you're interested in real estate photography, but if you just type in homes for sale in your area, so homes for sale, I'll type in Dallas. Do this for your area. It's just kind of an exercise. So I'm gonna pull this up. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's kind of reflective here, but you will see that the vast majority of those listings are photographed by a professional photographer. The same thing's true if you look at any products for sale or anything like that. So there's so much opportunity in photography this year that I want you to, number 1, get rid of that mindset. But number 2, if you're gonna do this, be strategic about the type of photography you do, because it can literally make or break the success you'll have. I would not, in my opinion, have the success that I have built the business that I have, make the money that I do if I picked a different niche. Sure, it could have been good. You know, I'm sure I could have built a business there. It's just like, there is a skill in picking a business, and I got lucky, but you don't have to. You now know how to weigh a niche. So that's what I encourage you to do. And if you're like, Eli, you know, real estate photography, that's why I watch your videos. It's interesting to me, and you haven't dove all in yet, you can find the link below to talk with my team about coaching. We'd love to help you through that process. That's a whole nother side point. Like, my business grew fast when I started being willing to learn from others instead of just have to make the mistakes myself. But that's my advice to you. So pick a good niche. And when you pick that niche, pay someone for their experience so you can go faster. My first 5 years were super slow, but a lot of students I work with grow so fast, and that's because they compress. They took my experience in those first 5 years where I made a ton of mistakes, and they just don't make those mistakes from day one. So I hope this is valuable. I hope it helps you build an awesome photo business in 2024.